Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel here. And definitely gotta talk about recent Flames news here, and definitely was not expected, especially how things played out this past week here. And I mean, definitely didn't think I'd be talking or learning about this after last week, enjoying the 107th Grey Cup. That was right here in Calgary, but it was after the Grey Cup. Things just definitely started coming up, and definitely most of this video, it's just basically reiterating what has happened and ultimately what's the case now, and the fact that we can maybe speculate on how things are going to go moving forward, not only for the Flames, but in hockey in general here, and also with all the stories and how the brass handle it. I think this is something you just can't prepare for, and as a fan and the brass, the management. I mean, this definitely was a bomb dropped on the Flames, and unfortunately, they're in the news recently, not necessarily for good reasons, and not because of play on the ice here. I mean, obviously, this season we're definitely a long ways off where we were last season. Where last season we had the best season in a generation. Where you were almost wondering, and I asked the question in my videos last year when I recapped the games: are we Stanley Cup contenders? And we had that unfortunate loss with Colorado in the first round, but we're falling behind so far this season based on performance, and lately we've been struggling to score goals here. And always the matter that comes up is, should we consider changing the coach here for performance on the ice? But well, the Flames are changing coaches, but not for stuff on the ice, but unfortunately off the ice here. And to say, it's definitely very shocking, all the allegations that came out here. It raises definitely some questions, and there's definitely going to be some more follow-up from the investigation into all these allegations and what ultimately has happened from the league and the parties involved. And I mean, fortunately, you got to say sorry to those who were affected by it, but unfortunately, the Flames inherited this mess, how it came out. But I think it was handled well. I mean, all started off with the game on the road in Pittsburgh there, that now former head coach Bill Peters had a tweet from a former player with allegations on words he shouldn't be said, which is not successful in society in general. But this whole story, I think, definitely is going to start maybe a revelation on how the game's evolved, and raising awareness of what's likely happening in hockey. And hopefully this could maybe empower players more to speak up and change the era of coaches, because it used to be that coaches used to be kind of the dictator, tyrant. And yeah, you could be a tough coach and try to motivate your team and come up with strategy to obviously win games and ultimately win Stanley Cups. That's what everyone aspires to do that's playing in the NHL, and that's what we all dream as fans, is that your team is going to win the Stanley Cup here. But there's things that can't be said and obviously done here, and definitely that's been the case what's come out here. And I mean, also the player that raised a tweet about Bill Peters, and this happened 10 years ago when he was the head coach of the Rockford Ice Hogs, who was the farm team of the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, Akeem Alou, he did actually play for the Flames, but not under Bill Peters, head coach right now. You got to go back to 2012, 2013 when eventually his hockey journey brought him into the Flames organization. But this, because he started off, Akeem Alou, I'm talking about, started off, he was drafted with the Chicago Blackhawks in 2007, second round, and he was in the organization. And then he got traded to the Atlanta Thrashers franchise, who eventually became the Winnipeg Jets now, in that Dustin Byfuglien trade when Chicago won the Stanley Cup. And then they had to make some cap decisions, and eventually he was traded to the Calgary Flames for prospect John Negrin at the time. And I definitely, Akeem Alou definitely had an interesting journey to, play hockey, and he's definitely played all over, but mostly he's been a minor leaguer. He played 7 games in the NHL all with the Flames and had a couple good games, but never panned out professionally here. And who knows about how the alleged incident happened. Did that affect him? And it is what it is. But then it all was just not only beyond that tweet, but it was former player when Bill Peters was the head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes. This is after he started in the ACAC of all places. Same college league that my St. Trojans, my alma mater, play in. And he didn't coach for the Trojans, but that's how he knew Mike Babcock from the Red Deer days. And then he was with the Spokane Chiefs WHL, and then he started close to professional with Rockford, and then he was with the Detroit Red Wings assistant coach, and then he actually got his first NHL gig as head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes, and that's when more allegations from former player Michel Jourdain, if I said his name right. It almost looks like Michael Jordan if you drop the E from Michael, and he's actually a Czech-born player, and he definitely alleged of more Ballisto's physical abuse. That definitely is something that's not coaching in my mind. And that's also happening. I'll put the TSN story in the description below here just to cover everything that has happened. And there's still going to be some more follow-up with the investigation, because the league's also investigating this matter, and also going to talk to particular parties, including Akeem Alou himself, who, but definitely I feel like Brad Treliving and the Flames brass. Brad Treliving definitely, if you watched his press conference where it was announced then that officially Bill Peters has resigned as head coach of the Calgary Flames, where oddly enough he was actually reported to be fired twice during this week, because it was a Monday night in the game against when we played Pittsburgh that the tweet allegedly came out. Akeem Alou allegedly, had things that should be said to him, and then it was Tuesday the next day when Calgary was going to move from Pittsburgh to Buffalo to finish their latest road trip, and I think it was Sportsnet that jumped the gun that said that he was fired due to his allegations because he wasn't with the team and he didn't run practice. And ultimately, the guy who was running practice, who was behind the bench for the Calgary Flames, associate coach, now interim coach, Geoff Ward here, who I personally think it's the right move to go ahead with him to bring some stability here. He's a long-time assistant coach in the NHL and will provide some stability here. And this team definitely needs some stability right now, and we'll see how things go. And he actually was considered to being a finalist for head coach a couple years ago when Calgary decided to hire Glenn Galtz in here, but he's now the interim head coach and will officially start the era, I guess you could say, started in Buffalo here, but Bill Peters still technically was listed as the head coach. But next game coming home when we play Ottawa here, the Geoff Ward is now officially the interim head coach here, and that's going back to where I first thought he was fired from Sportsnet, was tacked back at the Calgary Flames. I mean, they were definitely put in a tough spot here because all these allegations and that happened before he came to Calgary, and according to Brad Treliving and his statement, and he definitely, I mean, all parties involved can't really say too much about the matter because they're under oath and got lawyers, and you don't want to get too messy here. And I'm also trying to, I mean, I'm a Flames fan and definitely obviously follow the story because it's definitely been everywhere right here, and I have emotional investment in the team, and I recap the team on my channel here, mostly what they've done on the ice, but I just gotta give, I'm stunned that this has happened, but unfortunately it is what it is, and I mean, sorry for those that are affected, that and it's definitely took some courage for them to step up here, but I mean, you could say why it took so long. Well, Akeem Malou was he was just a fringe player, just started out playing professional for the first time, and then Michel Jourdain, the Carolina Hurricanes player, these were fringe players that, they were, unfortunately took what they took, but this is where maybe this will hopefully maybe change the culture. It doesn't matter if you're an everyday regular all-star or someone who's just cutting their teeth trying to make it to the show here, that, I mean, they're afraid that if they would have spoken up what they did, that their careers could have been derailed, and fortunately have labels all over them. But yeah, I mean, it's just that after the tweet from Akeem Malou and then the Michel Jourdain alleging abuse, and then apparently there was another player that unfortunately was left unnamed and might not want to be named, or might eventually be named down the road when there's a follow-up to this, and as the league opens more on the investigation here, and it just didn't look good for Bill with the first tweet and then the physical allegations, and apparently current head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes, Brind'Amour, who was working with Bill Peters at the time, confirmed all that, and there was more players from the Rockford Ice Hogs that aren't named right now as of this recording that confirmed that incident, which I'll put the story below that covers all the avenues here. But I mean, it does raise some questions, and I don't know if Brad Treliving at the time, when he decided to move on from Glenn Galdson, and he was fairly quick on hiring Bill Peters as head coach, because I mean, he was familiar with him a couple years ago when at the World Hockey Championships, when he worked with Bill as a general manager, so he saw him. And as a fan, I know I gave my take on the Bill Peters hiring. If you go way back earlier, I mean, I liked his resume, and he seemed like a great personality and loved the sound bites. And speaking of sound bites, it's definitely going to be a long while before he gives one. I mean, the only thing you've heard from him, and you have to say it definitely was done under oath and other legalese, is that statement that he made about that statement letter that was brought up, that he addressed it to the Calgary Flames general manager Brad Treliving. But he must have not had information, or someone was holding information on Brad Treliving when he hired him. I mean, he was fairly quick, because the situation that happened in Carolina was that Peter Carmanos, who was the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes for many years, he eventually sold the team to Tom Dunn, and then Peter Carmanos also was into the story that if he knew about the alleged physical incidents, that he would have not let Bill Peters go. And then there's just definitely a lot of questions that aren't answered, and I think it's shocking that this has happened, and I think the Calgary Flames handled all they could, because you can't prepare for this, but I mean, this is definitely unprecedented territory on dealing with this matter, and you know, all we can do now is learn from this, and hopefully this might change things about the future with how coaches are and players are interacting, just even in the so-called sacred confines of the locker room, because there's that old saying, what happens in the locker room stays in the locker room, but it should also be a place of family and that. And I mean, unfortunately, things that were said and done in the past, it's definitely not acceptable now in today's game. And even then, this shortly came after when the Toronto Maple Leafs, they let Mike Babcock go, but he was let go because Toronto was underachieving and not performing on the ice, and he's been with the Maple Leafs. This was going in his 5th season. Coincidentally, like I said, Mike Babcock worked with Bill Peters, and the one story that came out that might have started this story here in Calgary with Bill Peters is that when Mike Babcock was let go, Mitch Marner, he was a rookie at the time, and now he's one of the top go-to players for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Mike Babcock, I mean, you gotta say this is definitely not a good tactic that he did. It wasn't on the same lines as Bill Peters, but he actually asked Mitch Marner to submit a list of players he thought he worked the hardest to the least hardest, and he did that. He felt that he had to do that, or he wanted to, or he wouldn't be, still with the Toronto Maple Leafs, or shipped out, or sent down, and he did that. And players were called out that were on the bottom of Mitch's list there, and I mean, apply that in real life. Same with what Bill Peters happened. That definitely wouldn't be acceptable in workplaces today. And even if you're not happy with the performance there, no one expects to be called, what was called, and get physical. But now the least we can do for the Flames is move on. And I mean, definitely Brad Treliving's definitely been a rough week for him, and you still got to wonder. We brought Bill Peters in as head coach, and he didn't know about this, but then you hear some stories about some people in ordinary life that get into trouble with shock from the past, or we never suspect it to happen. But I mean, it's definitely my feelings on what has happened, and told you what's happened, and I'll put the story in the description. And I mean, unfortunately, it's sorry to the players that have come forward. I mean, that they've had to deal with that, and kudos to them for stepping up. It definitely takes some guts to do that, but for the sake of the Flames now, it actually looked like slowly things are turning around, and it would be awkward. Let's say if we turn things around and get back in the hunt, and get closer to where we were last year, and let's say get further in the playoffs. It would be awkward to look back on this week and say this turned the season around. And I mean, yeah, we did change coaches, but the Flames were painted in the corner, but there was definitely no scenario either where he was going to come back behind the bench for the Flames. And you might speculate that he might not even come back to the NHL in any capacity after all this, and further fallout from, because you haven't heard anything yet from the league. And the Flames saying they're sort of done because Bill Peters officially resigned from the Flames. I mean, there were a lot of people who were wondering how come they just didn't let him go, but that's the thing. It's not as easy as that when you have the legal matters to deal with, especially when you can come back and say, well, none of this happened with these guys. So I mean, that's all I can really say about this without getting too emotional or not crossing lines myself. But I mean, it's definitely been a interesting and rough, unexpected week to be a Calgary Flames fan and have this matter come to be, and I mean, you never prepare for it, and the Flames brass, I mean, they definitely, I think, handle it as well as he can. I mean, it's a case by case basis. There's no playbook that you can give to general managers or the ownership or anyone else who makes these decisions to suddenly say, "Oh, gee, Willikers, oh yeah, let's consult the handbook here." It doesn't work that way, and I'm gonna say, yeah, it's been weird. I mean, we definitely expected there was going to be a change of coach here, and I think the right course of matter is, Geoff Ward. I think he's ready to step up, and he's handled his self well. And the Flames practice, Flames players have seemed to have taken it well, considering everything, and we'll see how things will go from here. As it's going to be nice to talk more stuff about on the ice again, and we'll see what happens. And I'm sure I'll do some follow up after when the league gets involved and starts hearing, because we haven't heard anything yet from the league. And I mean, all it is has just been the Flames. I mean, that's where the focal point of this matter is, and I mean, they had to investigate everything. It's not just a matter of tarring and feather right away as well. I mean, these are just allegations, and with that statement letter that Bill Peters said that that means he somewhat admit that that happened, but none of this Carolina stuff. You haven't heard anything about that yet when he was coaching the Canes, but there's just enough, it's like, police work, and that's the one question I would have to ask Brad Treliving is, because he is the son of Jim Treliving on Dragon's Den, and recently, congratulations to Jim on getting a star on the Canada's Walk of Fame, if I understand. He now is one of the founders of leading Boston Pizza, but he actually did start his one of his career journeys was he was a police officer, and I'm sure I'm sure Brad probably consulted Jim on how to take this and approach this, given that Jim was a police officer. And the one thing that definitely stood out with Jim was that when he started off as a police officer, talking about Brad's father here, that he first used his power, his muscle to do his job, but then eventually he learned to use his mind instead of muscle and how to get things done. And I mean, the Flames had to do that, and they were painted in a tough corner here, and can only learn from this. And I mean, how much further back can you go? Or it's not like Big Brother here, where you get to analyze every minute of every day of everybody's lives before you hire them for a job. But this has got to also change the culture of hockey, and let's just hopefully say the power between players and coaches in society now are level now, that it's an open door policy, and players and coaches have because I mean, what was done 10, 20, 30 years ago, and coaches had the room, and read them the riot act, and you hear lots of crazy stories about some notorious coaches that had reputations in the past. And I'm going to state one current example of a coach that's definitely changed with the times is John Tortorella. He has a reputation of being a hothead, but I think he's definitely mellowed. And even Iron Mike Keenan, he definitely changed his coaching tactics over time from being, he had a reputation of being a big jerk and all the words, but he had success. But then when he eventually, towards the end of his NHL career, where we had Iron Mike Keenan for a couple of seasons, he wasn't the same coach then that he was here. That's how they lasted as long here. But that's just my take and feelings on it. I mean, basically, it's Bill Peters. He did officially resign his position as head coach of the Calgary Flames, and I think ultimately he was going to be showing the door either way. I mean, can't get too hypothetical here, but I didn't see any scenario where it was like everything's all done. He's back. He's coaching again as the Flames, because that definitely would open up another can of worms, a PR nightmare. So Bill Peters out, resigned. Geoff Ward in, and I say best of luck, Geoff Ward. I think he's definitely the right course of matter to keep some stability here. The players are familiar with him and like him, and he's definitely had a resume without being the head coach to ride the ship here. And I guess the other thing is that Craig Conroy also was brought down on the bench too. So that's another, because he was one of the assistant general managers at the time. So there's no timeline on what the Flames are going to do with the coaching, because they haven't gotten there yet after dealing with this past week. But I'm going to say things are going to turn around, and we don't need to do anything, and eventually Geoff Ward is now the head coach. But I'll put the story in the description below, but it's definitely been an interesting week. Feel free to comment on this matter here. But anyway, if you enjoy everything I do on my YouTube channel, I mean, this was just something I had to put out there, and just give my recap of what's happened and give my light opinions on it. And as someone who cheers for the Flames and follow the Flames and post stuff about the Calgary Flames on my channel, and there was an obligation to put my take on there. I mean, I did also watch other YouTubers who talk about hockey in general and give their take on it. And I mean, it's just talking about what has happened, and everybody's under oath here, so you're not going to get anything too juicy to that will sell papers. Or Brad Treliving even said, "I'm sorry I didn't make decisions right away to meet your timelines." But guys, we're still talking about someone's livelihood and humans here, and the case, I'm sure, assuming Brad Treliving is friends with Bill Peters, that was why he was brought in fairly quickly as head coach. And it's just a complex issue here. But I also, besides this matter, this is just unique. I mean, I recap the Calgary Flames. I also talk all Calgary sports, and I recently shared my videos and moments from the 107th Grey Cup at the festival and at the game there that I also put up there. And thanks to everyone who's subscribed. I actually hit the 100 mark fittingly on Grey Cup Sunday, one of my favorite days of the year. So that was fitting. Let's continue growing and see how this thing goes. And that's all on my channel. So if that sounds like you're interested in, make sure you like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. And go Flames. And things only go up, and we'll have better, more comfortable content to talk about then. So I'll see you soon.